Hi, everybody. Welcome to the handwriting recognition for archives discussion. My name is Ty Davies. I work for FamilySearch, and I am the director of product for records at FamilySearch. And Ian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks. My name's Ian James. I'm a product manager. Ty's my boss. I work with the handwriting recognition system and the team that productizes these technologies.
We're grateful to have you here today, and thanks for attending. We hope that this provides you a lot of additional value. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my brother. My brother was 7 days old when he passed away, and when I went to go, it was recently that I visited his grave. And when I went to go visit him, I realized that I needed to spend a little more time finding out a little bit about him. And so I went to my local archive. And my local archive was a building that I was very familiar with. I had grown up with it. I spent 20 years around my archive because it was also my local library. And I grew up in a town called Napa, California, which is a small town, but visited by lots and lots of people every year because they come to visit for the wine growing country, and it's a beautiful valley that people come and visit all the time. And so I was visiting, and I realized that I needed to go and find out a little bit about my brother. And when I did that, I went to this is what I found. This is the archive that I found. It's a beautiful old building. It's a wonderful old building. But it was in disrepair. And it was in disrepair because of an earthquake that had occurred in Napa. And the earthquake had done significant damage to the archive. And when I went into the archive, this is what I found. I found the records sort of all over the floor. And when I thought about that, I was concerned that maybe some of the records of my brother had been lost. He'd only been born 7 days, but I knew that there would be a birth certificate. I knew there would be a death certificate. I knew that there would be information about him there. And I was concerned that not only his records were lost, but my own records were lost. And so this is what we do at FamilySearch, is that we spend this time preserving records so they don't get lost, so the lives of people don't get lost in the future. But more than that, we spend a lot of time trying to make those records available to people. And the reason why we do that is, one of the reasons why we do that is to preserve the lives of these people so that people can find them in the future. One of the things that made me most concerned about the fact that my records, the archive had been destroyed and that my records might be destroyed, was now I was really deeply invested in the archive. I wanted to see that archive succeed. Now, fortunately, in my case, the building was refurbished and it became a wonderful restored building where those records could be preserved again. But what I didn't want to have happen was I became invested in that archive. And this is something that archives can do all the time by working with FamilySearch. And we're going to talk a little bit about what it takes for us to get people interested in your archive through providing our records online. And the way we do that is we collect your records through as you guys are all aware, we collect your records through cameras and we preserve them. And that's an important part of what we do. The other one is we put those online so that people know that your records are available to them. The problem has been something that the internet has struggled with for a very long time. When I was young and thinking about the internet held this wonderful promise that all the documents of the world would be available to everybody. It didn't matter who they were, they would be available to everybody and where they were. And that's just not been the case for archives yet. And because there's a problem. The problem has always been, how do you provide records to people in handwritten form that are not actually digital? It's been really hard. It's hard for the computer to figure out how to transcribe and we've had OCR technologies for a long, long time, but handwritten documents, especially those that change over time, become a real problem. And this has been a problem for FamilySearch. We have about 4 billion images that are available to us that could be put online right now. Of those, very few of those, about 250 million of them, 260 or 70 million have actually been put online. So I've got 400 billion that are still sort of outlying, and it's taken us almost 14 years to index that many records, and so in that many images. And so at that rate, it would take me 40 years to do all of it. And so we quickly began to realize that we needed to change, that we could bring in artificial intelligence to solve this problem, to accelerate it. We have thousands of volunteers that help us every day, and it's great in the fact that they help us transcribe these records, but it just wasn't going fast enough. And in fact, on average, it takes us about 2 years to publish a collection from FamilySearch. And that's just not fast enough. We've got to go faster somehow. And so we started looking at what it would take to have the computer actually read these documents, these images. And so we looked at what indexers do. And the first thing we realized what indexers do is first they type in text, computer text that the computer can actually read. And that's really important. But the other thing that they do is they tie that information to who they are on the record. Is it the person that was born on the record? Is it the person that was the person's parent? Where did they live? Those kinds of information. We have to tie those two things together. And then this third thing that it did is it created relationships between the mother and the father and the brother and the sister and the person that was born. All that information gets created in FamilySearch. And so the computer had to do that same thing. It not only had to recognize the text, but it had to identify who the people were and the relationships between them. We realized we had a really big problem. So we undertook the ability to start that process. And what we quickly began to realize is that automated indexing could be a reality through artificial intelligence and the use of pattern recognition in artificial intelligence. But that what it would take is for us to develop a ground truth set for every language throughout the world. And so the important part is that we have to develop a ground truth and train the computer, because the computer doesn't know the difference between languages, the Spanish language and the English language, or the Germans or the Chinese. It just doesn't know the difference. We have to teach it. And so we go about and we do that teaching. And then once you've done that, you can allow the computer to sort of do the actual transcription and find those people. But the problem is it's not super accurate, which becomes a problem. We can get it to about 90, sometimes high 80s, which is really good quality. It's good enough to publish, but it's probably not good enough to make sure that it's available to everybody and everybody can find it every time. And so what we need to do is we still use our volunteers to sort of improve that, and the people that are finding the mistakes, we let them help us to sort of improve those mistakes. So that's the basic process, but let me tell you exactly how the artificial intelligence works. This is sort of the secret sauce. The first thing that we do is we go through the document itself and we identify its structure. You know, how is it brought together? Is it in lines? Is it in paragraphs? Is it in blocks? Is it in tables? And do I need to extract it? That's what we call layout analysis. We do that layout analysis on the document, and the computer, with training, does a really good job of it. In fact, it can get into the very high 90s in terms of accuracy, in terms of the layout. Then the second thing is, once we've identified where that text is on the page that we need to identify through layout analysis, we do handwriting recognition on it. And that's following the pattern of the truth that it was provided that allows us to follow similar patterns of writing across different countries, across different ways of understanding. We can follow those patterns, and language changes over time. In the English language, the way we write F's and Z's have changed. And so I need to provide a true set for where that's changed over the world. And handwriting recognition and a true set will do that. And we can get actually pretty good accuracy, actually really good accuracy of the handwriting recognition, into the low 90s sort of accuracy, which is probably as good as a lot of the commercial keying companies can do on particular collections. So we're really excited about that. But then we have to then take that stream of text and identify where people are in that particular text. So we have to go and identify all the people and all the places. And then we have to develop identify all the relationships. That's what we call natural language processing. You do this every day when you talk to your Siri on your cell phone, or you talk to, it is doing natural language processing. And so that technology is available, and we can be fairly highly accurate at it. So, so let me talk about what our goals are in terms of making this happen. So we've started this process. We have a production system that allows us to start doing it, and we're doing test collections now. We've started publishing. We started publishing with this process, some Latin American countries, and we intend to expand into lots of different countries as we develop the technology and the capability. And this is important, we know that we can be accurate enough that people can find and use these records, because the reality is we don't use this isn't some esoteric exercise. This effort is intended to help people find these records so that they can be connected to the archive and understand the value of the records and their ancestors and all those kinds of things. So what we're trying to do is take a 2-year process down to a 7-day process. And we think we can do that with computer-assisted indexing. And when we do that, that provides a lot of value and capabilities to our users, and frankly to you as an archive, because your archive, then we can point people back to your archive and the importance of those records and the preserving, because they'll know that's where their lives are stored. Now, Ian's on, and Ian's going to show us just a little bit about what is happening, give a little demonstration of this product, because we know you're all very, very interested in this demonstration. And so we're going to provide you that demonstration and sort of rip back the covers and let you see the actual system working. So Ian, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Ty. Let me share my screen for a moment. So as Ty was saying, we've been developing capabilities specifically around being able to parse and understand handwritten natural language. And just to go, and this is a classic example of kind of what this looks like. And Ty mentioned the layout analysis that we do to basically be able to do things that, as we as people, our brains do this automatically as soon as we look at a document. They say like, oh yeah, this area is a thing, and that note right there, that goes with this thing, and this is composed of lines, and this, you know, there's a different thing down here. We do all of that without even thinking about it. As Ty was saying, we have to teach the computer how to do that, and we're going to look at that. But the important point here is that this is natural language. This is language that's written down as somebody would speak it, versus something like this, where in this case, right, this is not natural language. Instead, the semantics are put into the table, like the presentation of the document or the layout of the document captures a lot of the meaning and establishes a lot of the relationships between these actual fields. And so again, this is the kind of capability that we're developing specifically at FamilySearch. And so let me switch you over here. This is an engineering tool that we use for testing the system. And I've grabbed an image off of FamilySearch's website and load that. And here it is. It's from that same film where that example image I was just showing came from. And then we're going to run our systems on this. And Ty's going to get nervous, but don't worry, Ty. We added a caching layer, so this goes a lot faster now. And here we go. So what the computer's done is it's come through and it's done basically the same sorts of steps that we as a human being would do. It's identified big regions of things. That's what these dotted lines are right here, is big regions of things. It's identified these regions, and it said, we think that these things are associated one with another. It comes through, it splits out the lines, it's identified things that it thinks are dates. This is getting into the natural language processing. It's identified things that it thinks are key events. people, other dates. Here we go. Here are some names. And so it has the ability to come through and basically parse all of this information out. It also says, hey, we think that these are the way that all of these things go together. Like here's a record. Everything in here should be considered together and separate from everything outside of it. And so all of these are steps that we have to teach the machine how to do. And so if we come and take a look at these, like let's go look at the transcripts that are actually produced by this, you can see that it does a pretty good job of actually being able to read that Spanish cursive handwriting. And this always amazes me. Every time that I pull this up and look at it, I'm always blown away that this is a capability we actually have. But as Ty said, Ty mentioned that that quality is always an issue. Well, this system is a big sequence of steps, and sometimes those steps get off. And in a case like this, you can see that there are these characters where it looks like it missed these words. In some cases, if something like its ability to segment these records correctly gets off, or its ability to segment these lines and separate the lines one from another gets off, you can miss data. That said, it's also really good at recovering from things like this. And if we come over here and actually look at the records from these, here's the record off of the first. Record that we were looking at. But this is the kind of structured, computer readable, computer searchable data that Ty was talking about that would go into our search system that then patrons of FamilySearch could search for and find and be able to find their ancestors. And so you can see that it got this christening event. We're looking at church christening records in this case. It got a birth event that was also there. It identified the godparents. Here's one, here's the other. It looks like it missed the gender on that one. It identified the mother and established this mother-child relationship. And this guy is the priest. And if we look at the second record where it had that row where it had missed a lot of the words, you can see that in this case that didn't have a huge impact on the quality of the output record. This would still be very, very findable by people coming to FamilySearch and looking for this record. And if the machine makes mistakes, I guess this is probably the better place to look at it, earlier on, these can kind of propagate through the system. And so to Ty's point about being able to identify the content that looks like this image versus the content that looks like that table that we were looking at earlier, most archives don't organize their content that way. They don't say, yeah, this is all the stuff that's handwritten, and this is all the stuff that's tables. And so it's up to us. We have to train classifiers that can come through and separate it into piles, basically, or into groups, where we have a capability that works well across that whole group. And it's almost always because of the semantics. It's because of how the information is being presented. And so if I come to FamilySearch, to the historical record search, and I put in a film number for one of these films that we've processed and search for this, here are the records that we got. And if I come look at one of the images of these, they look like this. And here you have a similar record to the one we were looking at. You can see there's a lot of bleed through in this image, but all of these people are now found and they're searchable. And our focus right now is in Spanish-speaking countries, obviously, by these examples. And in many cases, the other ways of getting indexed records that we have for these countries are substantially slower than this way. And so we're hopeful that this will accelerate kind of the indexing ability and boost it ahead, in most cases years, and in some cases even decades, thanks to this technology.
Thanks, Dan. That was great. I hope this little demonstration sort of gives you the understanding of what we're doing and how we're trying to go about it, and helps you to understand how important we feel like providing your records is to the entire world. So thank you for participating and thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact your local FamilySearch representative. Thank you.
Bye.